So thank you to everyone that's able to join tonight. Sorry for the technical difficulties there. I am Jeff Gregg, the District 15 Council member. If I haven't met you, I hope that I'm able to do so very, very soon. Just to let you know that I'll have an open coffee to the community on November the 11th at 4 p.m. at Sunflower Bakehouse. So if you can stop by, I'd love to meet you. And with that, Adam, I will turn it over to you.
Okay.
And Adam, before we get started, if you could just tell us a little history. I know y'all have had maybe one or two community meetings prior to this one.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Councilmember Gregg. For anybody who wasn't on the call last time, my name is Adam Sager. I'm a civil engineer here in Nashville. I've been working predominantly in Nashville for about 16 years. We have a firm here in town called Dale and Associates, and that's who we work for. We do a lot of rezonings and land planning, civil engineering, design, surveying, and so we kind of act as a resource and a go-between between Metro, the owner, council members, things like that. And so that's one reason why a lot of people ask us to speak at these. We did hold a community meeting on June 22nd. I put that up there on the screen so people can see the date and remind me it's been a while. The reason why it has been several months is because of the council elections. When June 22nd meeting happened, Councilman Syracuse was the council member, and Councilmember Gregg has won this district, and so he is on the call now. And we wanted to wait until the elections happened and the dust settled, and so now we're back again to bring forth a rezoning of a property that we're going to be looking at. And the address is 310 312 Donaldson. I'm going to show a few slides, provide a presentation, and what we found works good on these virtual meetings is if you would be gracious enough to let me go through the slides, and I'll try to be brief and maybe make notes or ask or write down questions, and then at the end we'll open it up for question and response, and it's usually the. Let's see here. So if I don't know how many on the call were on the meeting last time, but I want to definitely reintroduce the property and make sure everybody understands where we are in the world. We're on Donaldson Pike. We are on the west side of the road, just north of Emery Drive. When we send out notices, a lot of the folks on this call, if you're a neighbor, you're probably own or live on a property that you can see on the screen. Some may be a little bit further off screen, so you probably have a good idea of where we're at. The two properties we're looking at tonight are zoned R10. The one on the north is zoned R10, and the one on the south is zoned CL, which is commercial zoning. It's about 2.6 acres for both properties together, ballpark. And a little bit of project information. This is kind of a boring slide. We can come back to it if we need to. One thing I want everybody to see is the policy, the T3CM, which is what we call a land use policy. I'll talk about that briefly here on the next slide. The zoning we are requesting is SP, and we're requesting 41 single-family residential houses. You'll see a layout here in a second. SP zoning is stands for specific plan. That means that what we are proposing goes through an arduous process through the Metro departments, through Planning Commission, and then 3 readings at council. And if everything goes forward, then what we show is what must be built. In other words, you have to go all the way back through the process again if you want to change that. So it's kind of like a great compromise. There's a lot of input that goes in on the front end, and then once it gets rezoned, that's what you have to build. It does go into an ordinance, so it is law. So somebody can't come back later in the same zoning and do something completely different. The land use policy, I wanted to touch upon this briefly. In land planning, whenever a property is looked at for development, the first tool Nashville Planning Department uses, so it's the first tool we look at, and it's the first tool that land planners look at, is the land use policy for the overall Davidson County. And you can find this online. It's accessible to everybody. And they've assigned certain areas and districts to develop and to kind of behave in a certain way. And so what you're seeing on your screen, it's kind of zoomed in a little bit here, but I want you to notice that on the left where the residential is, it's kind of got a taupe, kind of solid hatching there. But along Donaldson Pike, you're going to see this orange candy stripe hatching. That's the mixed use corridor right here where it says T3CM, Suburban Mixed Use Corridor. That's that orange candy stripe. What that means is that as anybody develops this property, the guiding principle is going to be a mixed use corridor. And as you can see along the right side, along Donaldson Pike, you're going to have zonings of office, residential, mixed use, commercial, and things like that as you go along the Donaldson Pike corridor. So that's really a guiding principle on how we assess the property and what we're looking at it from. And so if anybody were to pick up this property and go downtown and start talking to a planner, hey, well, what should this become? They're going to put you and steer you in a direction of a mixed use corridor. And mixed use will be commercial. It's going to be shops, restaurants, multifamily, residential, things like that. Basically what you already see along Donaldson Pike. And so it's something that's already embedded into the property. Now, I'm going to kind of zoom through these because I know questions is usually where we get a lot of traction in these calls. So I'm going to go through the two layouts. This is first the older one. This is what we presented in June. And as you'll notice, it's all residential. These are all individual units. These are attached townhomes and then some detached cottages. And what we heard during that meeting was concern about the backyards as you go to the left or the west side of the property. So as we near Seneca Drive, there was sensitivity to, well, gosh, if they build these houses in this configuration, you know, there's going to be trees taken out, and then we have this pavement over on the very far left is what we call a hammerhead turnaround. That's a safety fire department turnaround. And we have these houses over here. And what we heard from the community was, you know, okay, we got a project here. We understand why you're doing it and what you're doing. We don't like the feel of it. It feels like it's just pushing too far to the left and into the single family residential. So we went back and thought through it, and we did a couple things to hopefully assuage and address some of those comments. One is we took off the back property that connects to Seneca. So we eliminated that property and dropped it off of the consideration for the rezone. So that's no longer on the table. And then we started to pull the units further to the right and to see how we can maybe reshuffle these a little bit. We ended up, what you're seeing on your screen is a proposal of 44 units, 44 houses. And we ended up losing 3 houses off of this plan. And it looks like this. Similar shape, similar kind of context, but we lost 3 units and we pulled the units further to the right. Another thing that we did was back here on the very far left side. I don't know if everybody can see my cursor, but those were attached product further to the left, kind of like a duplex. We made those the detached product, garages. That'll be single family houses back here, and it pulls them to the right quite a bit. And then that property is dropped off. The rest becomes a buffer kind of area and pulls everything to the right to stay away from those houses that were over on the left side. Donaldson Pike side, we were able to take those from a detached and put those to an attached townhome product. We felt that better suited Donaldson Pike because that's the commercial end of it. So it would make sense as to why to do that. I'll come back to this slide. I know people may have questions about it. A couple quick views from Street View. On the left side of your screen is the property where there's a grassy field, and that house is, I think that's the one on the property. There is an existing home on the property. Honda dealership is right across to your right. And then just the opposite way, an anchoring point is the Honda dealership. You can see that now on your left. We're facing south. The property is over on the right side. That's the field. To kind of put people in context of where we're at. If anybody needs to take a snapshot of this screen, this is my phone number and email address if anybody has questions in the future. But I'm going to pause there. I don't want to, for all the people who were on the call last time, I don't want to regurgitate too much information, and I want to hopefully get to some questions. I'm going to scroll back up to the layout because that's usually a good place to kind of rest on for a minute. And with that, I'll open it up to questions. There's a couple ways we've done this in the past. If people want to unmute themselves and ask, that's great and helpful. Another way, council member, is if there's a chat function on WebEx, sometimes it's helpful if people type their questions and then we kind of take them in order that they get typed. That's worked in the past as well.
I believe there is a chat feature, so we can do that if you like. And Adam, just to regroup anybody that may not have been on that first call, the plan is to offer these for sale, correct?
That's correct. Yes.
And the property owners would be the developer, correct?
It's correct. The property owner, developer, home builder is Harian Smith. Reese Smith is on the call, and he is also present and willing to answer questions if you have questions about the owner, the houses, things like that.
And Reese, if I remember correctly, y'all have owned this property for quite some time. Was it not in your family? Am I remembering that correctly?
It was actually my grandparents' home. My mother was raised there many, many years ago. The 312 parcel.
That's what I thought. Okay, with that, if anybody has a question, if you'd like to put it in the chat.
All right. First question from Belinda. It says, when you say townhome, are you referring to actual townhomes or HPRs? Yes to both. The word townhome is a way to describe that we use in the industry to describe kind of the look of the product, which would be an attached single family dwelling unit that it has a shared wall with another single family dwelling unit next to it. So yes, that. The word HPR is horizontal property regime. That's a legal mechanism for the subdivision of land. An HPR exists for commercial centers. It exists for single family homes. It exists for townhomes. So I would say yes to both. They are the attached product would be townhomes, and all of the units would be on an HPR. Ben, I'm sorry I'm late, Mr. Frick. Can you share the plan for the rectangle behind the houses on Emory? Ben, and it's okay, gang, if people want to unmute and chime in if I'm addressing your questions. It's helpful to have dialogue. So Ben, whenever you say the rectangle behind the houses on Emory, are you referring to the rectangle that fronts on Seneca?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that rectangle we dropped off, there was a sensitivity to connection to Seneca. And so we simply eliminated that from the request of our rezone to SP. So we dropped that off of consideration. It's a R10 zone property. It will remain an R10 zone property, and we're not proposing to run any driveways or anything through it.
Great. Thank you, Adam.
Sure. And then Kate, as the property owner of 404 Orna, is there a way to add more of a privacy buffer for the 400s of, oh goodness, am I saying that right? Iorna?
Lorna, I might have spelled it wrong.
Or maybe it's just a lowercase L.
Yeah, it's lowercase L. I'm chiming in on Sammy, my fiance. We both live at 404 Lorna. And I really appreciate you taking in the uh what we said last time with the like privacy buffer on Cinecon stuff. But you can see like there's 404, and then I have that little like rectangle of land that's like basically um right where kind of the rectangle is, where that little rectangle, or I'm sorry, where that little square the triangle, I don't know how to describe it, sorry.
I tell you what, let me try to get out of the
It's the
view
one
that
that
we're
doesn't have
sharing.
any numbers in it though. You see that little rectangle?
Commercial viewer, so I can be more dangerous here navigating all this.
Yeah.
There we go.
I also nanny for toddlers, so my shapes are very a lot after a day with.
It's helpful. So I've got 404 Lorna
Yep,
clicked on the
that's it.
screen.
But then see how there's that little rectangle right behind my property right there? Yeah. That's also my property.
Understood.
And that's just one concern I have with it is that the trees, I don't have a lot of trees in my own property. It's really just kind of where I think those three little duplexes would be. So if there's a way to like move those in or just add more of buffer, if you can go to the slide that is the proposal. So see, that would be the rectangle of my property. It just feels like that's a pretty close one. And then my neighbor, Amber, she also, I feel like that's just kind of like a very small privacy buffer.
I understand. And some of what we're doing is going to take down trees and put up houses, and we're aware of that. At some point, we have to do the best we can to accommodate as many people as we can. Um, we'll try to put in robust buffers with plantings along both edges, keep the existing vegetation where it is. But what we're also trying to do is not do too much more impact than what could already be done in existence today on a commercially zoned property. And
Right.
so and what I mean when I say that is that a lot of these properties are slated to be commercial, and in a commercial zoning district, there are no restrictions on number of units and the footprints of the houses and things like that. And so we're trying to do an SP, which then reinforces a more residential kind of concept and feel and intention behind the properties rather than have more of a commercial zoning. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's one thing what we're doing to try to assuage some of the concerns about buffering is create it to be more of a residential than a commercial feel.
That's
At
helpful. Yeah, it just anything we can do to make sure that we still have like a good like thick privacy line. I feel like that would be the most helpful, especially because if these units end up having an HOA, it would just be nice to have that privacy to not exist there as well.
certainly. Okay, thank you. And I'm writing these suggestions down as well. So that was 404 loan. And Belinda Smith said, is R10 the zoning which allows STRs? Good question. No, it is not. STRs are allowed in commercial zonings, not residential zonings. So R10 does not allow STRs. To remind everybody, the property on the main property down the middle is already zoned commercial. And so what can be built on that today is apartments or townhomes, and it can be STRs and things like that. But what we're doing when we go to an SP, entrenches the property. It entitles the property into what we say it's going to be. When I say we, I mean your input, the council member, Metro's input, what we're proposing, it all gets kind of weighed in. And what I've heard from Hari and Smith, and Reese, please chime in if I misspeak here, but I'm fairly certain they're willing to put into the ordinance that there will be no STRs. In other words, we're actually removing the STR requirement from what already exists today, and willing to take that off the table, and then put it in perpetuity where there could be no STRs. So hopefully we get a lot of questions about STRs. They're useful if you're from out of town. Neighbors usually have a negative connotation of STRs, and that's why I'm kind of saying this one will be removing the STR allowance. Yeah, thank you, Belinda.
Adam, since this is a planned development, is there thought of any kind of fencing, or you mentioned some sort of buffer, but just curious if there is some sort of fencing that may be in the
Sure.
thought process?
Fencing is definitely something that can be considered. If it gets written into the SP, then you have to do it. There's other options. So we'll get varying opinions on fences.
Sure.
In the Metro code, there is an allowance to reduce the buffer widths if you put up a fence. So let's say the buffer width is a requirement of 10 feet. And then in the UZO, if you install a fence, you can reduce that 10-foot buffer down to 5 feet. The logic being that if a fence is there, it's kind of doing most of the job anyway of screening. But some people feel, hey, I don't know how I feel about a fence. And so what we will typically do on buffers is we will define a type A, a type B, a type C landscape buffer, and then that assigns a certain matrix of plantings that must go in there. What that looks like is it will say, and you can look this up in the code, it'll say if you're a type B buffer, a type C buffer, you have to plant X amount of canopy trees per 100 feet, X amount of evergreen trees per 100 feet, X amount of shrubs, X amount of understory trees. And so it creates an opaque screening that hopefully in time grows up to be a natural native vegetative buffer. And that's pretty much the standard for how we treat all projects in Nashville.
Makes sense.
I have another question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So where would the businesses be located? Are those going to be in the townhomes that are not on, or that are on Donaldson Pike?
Oh, okay. Yeah, we are not proposing any businesses.
Oh, okay.
So we're actually taking it from commercial, and in one sense, we're downzoning it to residential. That's a term that's used in our industry as downzoning. Really, we're just trying to find the right and best use of the property that fits this. It's half zone residential, it's half zone commercial. We're combining the two, and we're going to have all residential. So we are not proposing any businesses to go in on this property.
Okay, great. I misunderstood that. That's good to hear. And then just out of curiosity, there are a few houses that are they're on the dead end of McCampbell. So the properties that would be right along the edge of your townhomes, have they been invited to this meeting? I just didn't know if they were aware of it. I have never really talked to any of the neighbors back there, but there's 2 or 3 houses that exist behind my property, and that would be in between the townhouses. And yeah, I was just curious.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for certain here because we didn't do the invites. Metro Council did, but I can tell you that traditionally there's going to be about a 700 to 800 foot radius that they invite neighbors. And so I'm measuring on the screen. So if you were to take that blue line, if you can see that on the screen, and then go all the way around the property, those are all the folks that at least got invited on a normal basis to meetings like this. Sometimes people beyond that get invited as well. And so I would say if you're, at the dead end of McCampbell where it tees into Donaldson, if you're in that general vicinity, you would have received an invite for this.
And Rosie may be able to confirm that for us. Rosie, how many feet did we go out on this one?
We went out 1,000 feet from the address.
Okay, just making sure. I know some of my neighbors that lived across the street from me didn't receive an invite. I personally invited them, but yeah, I was just curious about those properties.
We sent it
Good
to
question.
the property owner, so if they were a renter, they wouldn't receive it. The owner of the property receives it.
Okay, cool. Just wondering about that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
The next question is from Amber. She is also on Lorna and wondering about if the houses are going to be single story or multi-story, and if the neighbors will be looking into my backyard and back windows. Well, I can't comment on where people are going to look, but I know that everybody has concerns about privacy. And if you are on this call and you don't like people looking in your backyard, whoever buys these homes are probably going to be people like us, and we don't like people looking in our back windows either. And so that's the purpose of the buffers, the vegetative buffers, is to create, a sense of privacy. And that goes both for the people who are going to live in this community, as well as all of you folks who live around this community. And so that same premise is there. We share that sentiment. As far as single story or multi-story, they're very likely going to be two-story. It doesn't mean that they can't build single stories. These were shown on the last meeting. These are not what is going to get built. These are very early preliminary kind of character images of what's being toyed around with. And so you kind of get a sense it's in a commercially zoned area. These are going to have probably more of a modern feel to them. But those are what's being looked at right now to kind of give you a sense of size and scale. And I'll click around, and if anybody has questions, please chime in. I can be chatty and I might just ramble on. So.
Hey, this is Belinda. I thought I understood you to say shops, restaurants, or whatever earlier. So could you clarify that just so I know what you're talking about?
Oh gosh. Yeah, if I said shops and restaurants, I hope I didn't misuse that. We are not proposing any shops or restaurants. It's all residential uses is what we're proposing. I don't know if I said it or not, but when I was talking about the land use policy, if Belinda, for example, if you were to purchase this property and you say, hey, what's the best use of this property? And you go to downtown Nashville and you ask the city planning department, hey, what would be a good use of this property? What they're going to do is pull up this map right here on your screen that has a mixed use corridor, and it would be open for any mixed use, meaning restaurants, shops, companies, businesses, multifamily. That's kind of what the underlying intention is for these properties. And so it doesn't mean we are going to do that. It just means that's what the city has allotted for these properties. It was determined during a process called Nashville Next that happened several years ago. And so that's what that derives from. So again, to be clear, what we're doing and what we're talking about on this call is a rezone to SP. And so if you can think of, I hope I can say this correctly. If you think of it in terms of density, where you would have like industrial at the very top, and that's super dense and takes up a lot of impervious surface. And then you have commercial zonings. You might have grocery stores, restaurants. Then you kind of come back down into maybe a Dollar General, a law office space. And then you come down to multifamily zoning, and then down to single family zoning. And so that's kind of how we think of the intensity of zoning. And so what we're effectively saying with this SP is we're not going into the upper mid densities of what other people are along Donaldson Pike. What we're doing is we have a client who has owned this property. It's been in their family for many years, and they're a residential builder. And so it kind of fits right in line with them to kind of self-impose residential only on this property. And so what we're doing is coming in and saying, we're going to put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, is that when this SP goes forward, and if it were to get approved, it'll go into law. And if you recall what I said on the outset about SPs, if this gets approved as residential only, then that's it. It's residential only. It outlaws the possibility of a restaurant or a business or somebody else. So it kind of locks you in to that lower intensity of a zoning classification. That might be more than what you wanted to know, but that's kind of what we're doing. Ben said, again, is it possible to put in the SP that these homes cannot be used for short-term rental, such as Airbnb? Absolutely. And that is exactly what we're saying, is that if an SP goes forward, whatever you write into the SP, that becomes law. And so we will write language into the SP that says no short-term rentals will be allowed. And it's not something that will get missed, I assure you. It's been a hot topic for several years, and it is a customary item for us to write into an SP, and the planning department pays attention to that as well. Sammy said, if it is possible to go down 3 more units and take off those houses that are on the Seneca side, that would be a win for everyone. I appreciate you listening to everyone in this neighborhood, the wildlife and the trees. Understood, Sammy. Thank you for that. Honestly, just to be fair, that's I think that was almost the same comment we got last time. We had 4 units back there, and we eliminated those. We had 44 units. We dropped off the entire back property from consideration and reduced it by 3 units down to 41. And so that was the old plan. And then this is the new plan, and you can see they're shifted over. So at some point, I've got to represent my client as well. They have an interest in the property. And so we'll probably have a layout similar to what you see on the screen. I don't know if they're going to want to drop units, because they've already been crunching numbers, and to develop is very expensive, and they have to get a return on that. So Ryan Gill, what delays or issues can we expect when plumbing, water, and electricity is being installed? How far would these issues reach? Good question. If everything goes according to plan, no delays, no issues with plumbing, water, or electricity at all. And in fact, I can't tell you this on the call right now. I can't give you a guarantee, but I can tell you how the world develops is that you have main utility trunk lines that run and feed off of the main corridors, like such as Donaldson Pike. And so if you drive down Emory and you come off into Seneca, and now we're back into the neighborhood, there is a very high likelihood that is all on its own electrical circuit, and our property would never even cross over to that circuit. So electricity shouldn't be a concern at all. Water and sewer would come off of Donaldson Pike. We wouldn't be going the other way. Therefore, water and sewer shouldn't be interfered with at all. And so while I can't guarantee things on this call, I can tell you we've done this for a long, long time, and I can't see any reason why any utilities would be disrupted for the residents relative to this property. Sammy, when would construction start? Good question, timing. So where we are right now is we have not even submitted anything to Metro. We, and I believe this at our company, and I think this is how it should be in zoning, is that before we submit anything, because this is impacting the neighbors, we inform the council person first. We hold these community meetings first to solicit feedback, inform you of what we're doing, and then we submit. Because what we don't want to do is submit and make a presumption that we're going to just do this, and then it almost feels like these meetings are formalities. No, we genuinely listen. We have already made some adjustments and changes, and so we haven't done any submitting yet. That means that we're not even to step one. So Sammy, to answer your question very quickly, when we submit, I would budget about 6 to 7 months on paper to go through a submittal review through all the Metro departments. Then we go to Metro Planning Commission, and then another few months to go through 3 readings at council. So let's just ballpark say that that's going to be 6 months from where we are today. After 6 months, that just is the zoning. It'll probably be another 6 to 12 months to get through design and approval through Metro. Anybody who's in the Metro development world, it takes a very long time to get a permit these days. So now we're into 12 to 18 months before you can get a permit. So I would say best case scenario is you're probably looking at 14 to 18 months from where we sit today before anybody would go out on the site and start any work. Construction work on a project like this might take, I don't know, a few months, let's say 3 to 6 months, and then however long it takes to build the homes. So that's a very quick run through. Hopefully that's helpful. Ryan Gill asks, has there been a traffic study done to see what the impact is? No, the traffic studies really don't move the needle until you get up to about 75 units. It used to be 100 units in Metro, and they since have dropped that years ago to 75 units, so it's not a requirement. And typically we'll not see a traffic study warranted unless you're on a major intersection with stoplights, or until you get probably north of 50 to 75 units. The reason for that is Donaldson Pike is such a heavily traveled commercial road. 41 houses here. It might feel a lot relative to just being a neighbor, but when you're talking about traffic loads, it's got a very small impact. And that's why they don't do traffic studies, because it doesn't change anything in the traffic study. It's like kind of throwing a 5-gallon bucket into the Cumberland River, so to speak. But that's why the traffic study hasn't been done. What we will do, though, is we still have to meet NDOT standards for access, for sight distance, traffic control devices, and things like that. So it is something we pay attention to. But specifically, when you say traffic study, that is not warranted on this project. Ben said, is there any way we could be emailed a copy of this presentation? I don't mind at all. I'm happy to email out the presentation. I think it's being recorded. That's probably the best mechanism to make sure it's all on the up and up and apples to apples. I believe Rosie said that she was recording this presentation, and certainly that can be sent out to everyone. And then whenever we submit, by the way, if anybody on the call is saying, I want to get a copy of that, when we submit to Metro, it becomes public record, and y'all can get copies of whatever we submit to Metro. Let's see here. You said you hadn't submitted to Metro, correct? Does that mean you still don't know if you'll need the fire turnaround or not? We do enough of these projects to know that the fire department turnaround is going to be required. It's a safety issue. We have to meet fire codes, and we are aware of that. So we go ahead and layer that in and build that in on the front end. We could just pretend to say, oh, we'll just eliminate the fire department turnaround, but it's going to be there anyway, because we have to keep these houses safe. So that's why it's there. And then when is this looking to be submitted? Right now, the next submittal date, I believe, is towards the end of November, is the next one that gets slotted in. And so we would be shooting for that. Where is that on the new layout, the fire turnaround? Oh, of course, great question. So let me see if I can draw on here. There we go. So we have what's called a T turnaround. Previously, we had what's called a hammerhead. The fire department turnaround is structured like this right there. That's that stub out. It's a minimum of 60 feet from the center line, and a fire truck will pull in, back up into that little pull out there, and then pull out. So that is the purpose of that little paved pull out right there, is for a fire truck. Overflow parking, another great question. Just like you guys, the people that live here, I'm sorry, I don't know how to delete. The people that live here are going to have a birthday party or a Super Bowl party from time to time, have friends over. And so, gosh, I knew I should have looked at it. We have 41 units. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 13 of those units are going to have 2-car garages. The rest will be walk up from the surface parking. We have to park a minimum number of bedrooms. And what we try to do is provide about a half to 1 space per unit in guest parking if we can. And so there will be overflow parking. You can see it on the screen. All of those parking spaces are for the homes and for the guests. What we'll typically see in communities like this is that they're going to be 2 to 3 bedroom units. And for every 2-bedroom unit, you have to provide 2 parking spaces. And for every 3-bedroom unit, you have to provide 2.5 parking spaces. And so some of the units may have a roommate where they have 2 cars. Some may be a married couple, 2 cars. Some might be a married couple with 2 kids where they only need 1 car or 2 cars. And but yeah, we try to have as many guest parking spaces as possible because it's in our best interest too to serve the people who are going to live here.
Is that all the questions, Adam?
Yeah, that's all I'm seeing in the chat. And unless anyone else wants to chime in.
Any other questions we did not answer for you?
Yeah, and if I don't say it, I want to say it now. Thanks for everybody for the questions and the feedback and for coming out on a Wednesday night to listen to us present it. We want to make sure that our neighbors know what we're doing and it's helpful. So thank you.
And Rosie, where would the link of the recording be posted, or will I receive that so that I could email it out if needed?
After, I have to send it to Metro Nashville Network, and then they upload it and send me the link, and then I can send it to you to forward. It will be on YouTube. That's the way it works.
And I will do this. I'll put my email in the chat. If you have a concern or a comment that you didn't feel comfortable making tonight, or if you want to think about it and then reach back out, I welcome that opportunity, and happy to share those questions back to Adam and the team. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, we'll go ahead and end the meeting. And thank you for taking the time to join us. Adam, thank you for the well-prepared presentation. And Rosie, thanks for setting it up.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you, Councilmember Gregg, and good luck on your new term. We wish you well.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Thanks all. Please feel free to reach out if you need anything.
Thanks, everyone.